Cloud. Okay. Now it's recording.
Ready, right?
Let's start.
So, yeah. Now we are finished with going for refuge. And for immeasurable, we are done. So we also taught the visualization when going for refuge, and we also discussed about the kind of visualization to do for immeasurable. So for these two, we have devoted the enough time. Right. So now then we are going to discuss about the visualization. We talk about the visualization. So so before we do this kind of visualization of the Ksitigarbah, Ksitigarbah, the beginning of the visualization is done with the understanding of the emptiness or selflessness. So therefore understanding of emptiness becomes very important, and this is the very core teaching of the Buddha. So without having, if you don't have understanding about emptiness, then it is very difficult to do the daily practice. Right. So whatever kind of practice that we are to do, it is always important to remember and to reflect on the understanding of emptiness. Emptiness is the very hard teaching, and the core teaching of the Buddha. Because the reason why it is very important to understand the teaching, to understand not only and our final purpose is to achieve enlightenment, right? So this understanding of emptiness is very extremely important, even in one's day-to-day life, day-to-day life, and also day-to-day life experience, right? If we are to look really for some kind of inner peace, some kind of satisfaction, if we are to to make our life, to make our life something living, then it is very important. It is not. It is just not enough and sufficient to be existed. Existed. It is more important to make sure that we are, something living, right? So, in order to make ourselves something living, something living and something that we are living in a full way, in a complete way, then understanding and the practice of emptiness, becomes very, crucial, right? Because why it is very important and what is so crucial is because as is said by the great master Ksitigarbah, right? He says all the degenerations, all the degenerations, and all the all the misfortunes, all the defects, all the shortcomings, all the downfalls, all the inauspicious things, all the things that we really do not want innately, all this arises from confusion, one's confusion state of mind, right? So so much of the so much of our unwanted things, much of our unwanted experiences, right? The things that we do not desire, much of our unhealthy mental states, all this is very clear that all arises from the confusion mental state. So therefore, to dispel our unhappy mental state, to dispel all the suffering, to dispel all the problems, right? To dispel all this, undesirable mental state, right? Undesirable stuffs, undesirable things. It is not sufficient. It is not sufficient to apply the temporary kind of the temporary applications, the temporary antidote, right? Antidotes. Right. For example, right, if we are suffering from some kind of terminal illness, right, some chronic disease, in order to remove, this kind of disease from the root, we need to take the medication which helps to remove the disease from the root, right?
吃的药呢，必须是能够从根上治疗这个疾病。
Right. For example, also, if we want to cut down the poisonous tree, it is not enough to cut from the leaves, branches, it is of not much use, because it will grow if you try to cut down the poisonous tree. You need to cut down from the root, right? We need to cut down from the root. So like this, similarly, here we are talking about, removing and dispelling the suffering and the suffering that we have experienced in the past.
我们同样的，我们这里我们所谈论到的是驱除
And also the suffering that we have been experiencing.
我们包括说我们在过去我们所经受的烦恼和
Right.
以及现在当下我们在经受的烦恼和痛苦。
So long as we are not able to apply the internal application, internal antidote,
没有
internal antidote,
去施用我们内在的
we have
对
the
治的方法
tendency to experience
这样的一种倾
the unwanted suffering also in the future.
受这些我们不想要的，在未来继续接受我们不想要的
Right.
这些烦恼。
Also in the future. So therefore,
因此
in order to cut off the root cause which make us
为了
which
解除我们的
which make our life
为
unsatisfactory.
了从
Right.
根上切除那些导致我们生活变得不愿意、不满足的一些因素。
So therefore, just going down to the root is very important.
寻找到它的根，烦恼的根是非常重要的。
It is very clear, that Buddha was out of his great compassion for the entire beings.
佛陀的
Out of his great
为
compassion,
了利益
he was
一切的
just
众生
trying
大
to
慈悲心
tell us, he was just trying to go to the bottom, at the bottom of the problem. What is
大的
the
悲心
what really lies at the very bottom of our problem,
所
trouble,
尝试的在
or
做的
what is called as
给我们
misery,
世俗
right,
我
or
们
suffering.
所有痛苦和烦恼的根源。
So Buddha was trying to go into the depth,
因
and
此
then trying to reveal,
他尝试
that's it.
是进入到它的深层次、它的根本上面，来给我们显示烦恼的根。
Buddha, through his experience,
通过他佛陀，
he
通过他自己的经验，
he has not invented,
没
this.
有说
When we talk about the Four Noble
发
Truth,
明了我们
he has not invented the Four Noble Truth.
他并不是发明
He
了
just
我们
discovered, that we have not
发
discovered.
现了
You know,
我们所没有
he
发现的
discovered something, something new. So this, what he discovered, he was just trying to help us.
他所
Right.
发现的，仅仅是想通过这样子来帮助我们。
Therefore, Buddha said,
因此佛说，
the the truth of the suffering. Buddha say
苦地，
they
苦地是文言文，白话文的意思就是苦的。
Buddha say there is suffering in the world. There is a suffering.
历史的道理，苦的。
There is a suffering in the world. There is a suffering in one's life.
那在我们的人生当中，我们都有。
And then in the second, right, then this suffering has the cause, right? So
然后第二个部分我们讲到极地，极地呢就是我们苦。
and then he in the third noble truth, he was just trying to tell us, if we make an effort,
如果
this
第三个
this unsatisfactory, the things which make us, go through suffering can be eliminated once and for all.
那我们这些令我们导致烦恼和痛苦的，去对治它，我们可以去除
Then
我们的烦恼和痛苦。
in order to achieve that state, the cessation quality, nirvana, what is called a moksha, right? Moksha is a lasting and eternal peace. This can be
为了
achievable
我们一定
if we make an
我们
if we make an
努力，
effort,
我们
if we apply the antidote, that is the truth of the wisdom. There is wisdom.
施加它的这个
The
对治
path,
方法
spiritual path leading to that
达到
quality,
我们
right,
灭
which helps us to reach that state,
的状态，
right?
涅槃的常乐的
So Buddha
状态
skillfully,
因此，
trying to truly, help us,
佛陀是非常有技巧的，来帮助我们。
If on the other hand, if we don't have to go into next life, then temporary method is also can be very helpful, right? Temporary method,
不需要说有来生，
temporary method can be helpful if we don't have to go
短暂的对治方法
on to the next life
会变得很有帮助。
in the future
基于
after the next life,
我们并不需要进入，我们没有未来，
the next life after this life.
但是我们未来一世之后会觉得下一世这样子的转生。
Right. So sometimes what really happens is sometimes we have the notion, a mistaken notion, people sometimes say,
我们自己有一些错误的观念，
what happened to Buddhism, right?
有人会问说啊，
Buddhism talks about the pessimistic thing. What talk about all the suffering things,
经常谈论的就是苦。
Buddhism talks about suffering after suffering.
人们会说佛教一直在谈论的就是苦界的苦这样子。
Right. So then, if the Buddha has not taught us that, if Buddha has not taught us the method to reach the to achieve the lasting peace,
去获得
then of course,
平静
then of course,
平静的这种方法，
then talking about suffering after suffering is of no use, right?
是没有
It makes us look
会让
like
我们会让我们变得非常的消极。
look into the Four Noble Truths.
但是如果我们来深入的了解四圣谛，
Right. To reflect on one's own suffering, these things,
并且以此来观察我们自身的苦。
And then Buddha say, there is a method.
然后我告诉了我们说，
There really is a method, powerful method that we can, that we can overcome
我们
what
有一个方法
which we can overcome
可以
all our, unhealthy mental states and delusions
所有的，
which lies at the root of the ignorance or what is called as confusion.
并且呢，
This can be eliminated. Buddha taught this.
苦的根源。
That is really something marvelous. Because Buddha is teaching the method, how to get rid of this. So it's not about Buddhism. Is not about pessimistic. It is. If it does not teach us the method, then if one could say, oh, pessimist, to some extent, maybe some element of truth. But then Buddha is talking the great deal of methods, many methods. Lot and a great deal of again, Ksitigarbah, the great master, said, all the teaching that Buddha has taught is based on dependent origination. And that he taught the dependent origination for the purpose of to pacifying our delusions, to pacify our delusions, to pacify all the suffering, to achieve the final and the lasting peace. Right. If we were to achieve the lasting peace, if we were to make all the effort, to overcome, to get rid of our suffering, understanding of the emptiness, understanding of the selflessness, becomes one of the most important things. Therefore, Master Lama Tsongkhapa said, all the degenerations which comes from confusion or ignorance. And in order to dispel that confusion, what thing makes this dispel, overcome, is by cultivating the wisdom. By cultivating wisdom. So it is only through cultivating the wisdom that we are then totally freed from all the things that we do not desire. That is suffering. Suffering is what everybody don't desire, right? But then, although we do not desire, it does come like a ripples of water, one after the another. Suffering comes like one after. Why? Why the suffering comes? Because fundamentally, because of our believing in the right, because of our believing in the believing in the true existence, right? Grasping at the true existence, that is confusion. That is, ignorance. That is ignorance. Right, that is ignorance. So there are, again, many great Indian Buddhist masters, early Buddhist masters. They also taught a great deal about, how we can bring an end to suffering or misery.
终止我们轮回和苦。
So this understanding, not only that we are able to, we are able to remove all the afflictions from our mind
通过对于
once for and all.
我们可以断除我们内在的烦恼。
Even in dealing with the day-to-day life's problem, the difficulties,
哪怕说在我们
this understanding, proves to be very helpful, very, very helpful.
因此，对于空性有些微的了解，会变得非常的有意义。
So, therefore, now, for example, right now, if we make our life, up to the level of our expectation,
如果我们的人生可以过得犹如我们所期待的一样，
as we discussed
我们谈过
many times, that
许多次，
as the external facilities,
我们
no doubt,
外在的因素
very helpful,
是非常有帮助的，
extremely, beneficial.
是非常也是可以很有帮
It
助的。
provides the physical comfort,
我们身体上、物质上的，
but then it cannot guarantee the mental happiness, mental joy, right? Mental satisfaction. It cannot guarantee the mental satisfaction, because
因为
in our day-to-day life experience, we are exposed to a lot of news, we are exposed to the news,
我们都有接触到非常各种各样的新闻，
where the, affluent, person, we see them committing suicide.
非常
Everything there,
看起来
nothing is lacking, materially, economically, financially, nothing lacking. But something's lacking inside. What's that?
没有外在的财富上的缺失，但是他所缺失的却是内在的财富。
Mm. So, and not only this, there are many cases, there are many cases, the things like this,
我们有许多的例子，
So therefore, it is not enough. It is not just enough to have the physical comfort alone,
仅仅
right?
拥有物质上的舒适是不够的。
So the thought process, the mental thought,
我们
what we describe as the mental thought, those within the world of the mental realm, right? Within the world of the mental realm, there are different types. Some are destructive emotions, some are positive emotions.
我们有些情绪是
Right.
有伤害性的，有些情绪
So
是
destructive emotions are what we don't need, right?
这些有伤害性的情绪是我们不想要的。
So the important thing is to that we need the cultivation of the positive thoughts, positive emotions, right? Positive mental states.
因此，我们所要做的就是要培养我们正面的情绪。
So these positive mental thoughts and mental states truly help us maintain the joyful,
真正的帮助我们保
the
持
peace of our mind,
内心的平
to
静
maintain
快乐的人生，
and to make our life complete and meaningful.
让我们的人生
Complete and
变得
meaningful.
完整和有意义。
So then, if we, if we were to just try to cultivate the positive mental states,
尝试着去培养我们
for example, like
内心的情绪
the practice of the love,
讲到的慈悲的修行，
it is very important, although the practice of love, the practice of self-discipline, the practice of patience, the practice of forgiveness, all this, the practices, the message,
包容
all these wonderful message are, what all the world major faiths, world major religious traditions
虽然说这些
have been talking about,
这
right?
些普世的价值在其他的宗教里面也有谈论到，
But then, on the other hand,
但是在另一方面来讲，
the very important thing is that,
重要的事情是
on the one hand, we can also, we can also practice them. We can practice them
我们也可以去行使它们，
we can practice them without touching religion, right?
另一个方面来说，我们讲到的这些普世的价值，我
We
们
can
也可以说
practice them without touching religion.
修持它，而不用与任何的宗教有任何的关系。
When we are able to do so, then we are able to implement this in one's day-to-day life experience, right?
如果我们这样的尝试着去做的话，我们就已经可以影响到我们每天的人生生活。
To make them more powerful, these practices, to make them, for example, like the value of the love, the value of the forgiveness, the patience, the discipline, self-discipline,
自律，
for example, like altruistic,
以及我们利他性的修持，
altruistic mind. All these, can make powerful if we
这些都可以变得
if we really if we really relate it to the understanding of the emptiness
特别
or
来说
selflessness,
都变得
right?
更加的有力量。如果我们能够把它们和我们对于空性和无我的道理所相关联的话，
The greater your understanding of wisdom is,
我们对智慧、空性的智慧
the better we
更
can
深入地了
practice
解的话，
these,
那我们
ethical disciplines,
让我们
ethical
让我们对
disciplines
这些
and these values
修辞
in a more effective way, in much effective way,
更加的有力量和有效率。
right? So therefore, before we are to understand, before if we were supposed to practice this in very effective way,
如果我们想要非常有
effective
效
way,
来去行持、去修持，
if we are well equipped with the understanding of the wisdom,
那我们
right?
需要我们的那我们需要对空性有更深入的了解。
Then we need to understand, first of all, is wisdom, right?
因此，首先我们要去了解的是，
In order to understand wisdom, we need to understand what is selflessness, what is the emptiness, right?
我们所要了解的就是我们所讲到的无我以及空性。
What really is emptiness?
那什么是空性？
So this teaching is truly, marvelous, and as we discussed, it is the very core teaching of the Buddha.
是佛陀，我们已经谈论过，是佛陀所有教法的核心。
Because it is directly related with one's experience, right? Experience.
因为这些是和我们自己的经验都相关系的。
right? So when we talk about emptiness,
那我们谈论到
emptiness, selflessness,
无我
empty. Everything is, we say everything is empty,
我们说
right? Everything
一
is
切的
empty.
事物都是空性的。
This empty is applied for all the things of the past, all the things of the present, and all the things of the
都
future.
适用于一切过去、现在、未来的事物。
There is not a single thing
没有
which has this,
任何一个事物
the characteristic of empty,
不是空性。
right? So therefore, when we say things are empty,
当我们说
we are
事物
not talking about,
空性的
we do not misunderstand
是空
in
的
a sense that
不要去错误的理解它，
things does not exist,
说
right?
事物是不
Or
存在。
things are
当
zero,
我们说
right?
事物是空的，并不是
Like,
事物不
n-
存在，或者是
numerical number
就
zero.
像我们比如说我们说的数学上说的是并不是这样的一个意思。
So, therefore, what is empty of, right? What
因此我们要了解
if we say
我们说
everything is
空的是什么？
empty,
我们说
what it is empty of, right?
那我们就了解说它空的是什么？
So, it is the absence, it is the devoid, it is the lack of independent and intrinsic
我们这里
existence,
对象是
inherent existence,
缺
inherent existence,
任何
inherent existence,
固有
intrinsic existence,
固有的
solid existence, concrete existence,
并没有
substantial existence.
强独
The
立
different terms,
自主
terms.
的这样的一种自信
So， these terms are
一种本
very
质。
important to to
对于
gain
我们
some
刚才他讲到了好几个不一样的词，
right.
非常重要的是去了解我们刚才讲到的这几点。
Right.
General, could you repeat the last sentence? The object of the empty.
Uh,
The object, the empty.
yeah, the absence
是
of the
我们空的
intrinsic
缺少
existence,
自信固有
inherent existence,
嗯
the solid existence,
inherent 以
the
及 solid 固有的
the concrete existence,
实有的。
the substantial existence.
Substantial 呢，就是substantial 呢，翻译非常
So these terms are very
跟实有
important to understand.
这样子的一个本质，这是我们所空的这样的一个对象。
If I give the example, right?
如果我们举一个例子，
Better use take some as a some thing as a example.
我们来举一个例子。
Now, for example, this book,
那师傅手上拿的一本书，
this book that we do say,
我们看到
we
这
say
本书
it is empty of inherent existence.
它没有自信，
It is empty
没有
of
自信。
intrinsic existence.
我们说它
Now,
是没有自信的，是什么意思？空，我们说的是自信空，没有自信，并不是说没有存在。
now we say this book is empty of intrinsic existence, right?
我们说这本
In order to understand that this book is empty of
这本书
intrinsic existence,
自信
inherent existence, we first of all need to understand what do we mean by
我们
true existence,
我们所说的
intrinsic
真实
existence,
的存在，
absolute existence, concrete existence,
实有
substantial existence.
重
We
大的
need to
存在
understand.
这样是什么意思？什么意思？
Although the so-called true existence does not exist,
虽然说我们
the so-called
实有
intrinsic existence does not exist. Inherent existence does not exist. Substantial existence does not exist. However, if we were to characterize the characterize the nature of the true existence, inherent existence. Right. Now, for example, this book, if we say this book is empty of inherent existence, but what but then if this book does possess the true existence, if this book does possess the true existence, then what do we mean? What does this book characterize? That true existence. If this book empty of inherent existence, however, if this book does possess, then what happens? Then, right? Then what would be the problem? Right? Then the problem would be this book, right? This book, when it appears, this book appears as something, some kind of, there's some solid, when this book appears, to our sensory perceptions, it appears as if the book is right out there. The book is appearing from its own side. I'm here, right? This book appearing from its own side to my mind. So in reality, now this book, right? This book appears to my mind from its own side. When I say this book appears to my mind from its own side, that means now we are trying to say, right? Now this book appears from their own side to my mind, right? So now is something there. This book is something there. Where is the book? Where is this book which appears from its other side, from this side, right? Where is this book? Right. Now the so-called we call as a book. This piece of book, yellow book. This book, we say, is something appears. The moment things appear from its own side, And we, just as it appears to our mind, to a thought, we are grasping into it.
会怎么样？我们的内心就会执着于它，执取于它。
We never think that this book is mere designated by your thought.
我们仅仅是我们内心的我们内心的概念所安立的。
If the things exist without designation of your mind, that alone is what is called as true existence,
如果是
independent existence,
事物
intrinsic existence, right?
如果事物它的存在完完全全的没有内心我们的概念的安立的话，这样子的存在，我们可以把它定义为固有的存在。
Now this book, right? We call, oh, this book is there,
我们说这本书就在那里啊，
I see this book,
看到了这本书，
if there is such called this book,
真的有这么我们所谓的
this page is
这么一本书。
this page, the cover page, is it this book?
我们说我们打开这本书，
The second page is this book. The third page,
是我们的所说的
fourth,
我们的第
how
三
many
页、
pages?
4页，我们的第5页，
There's no page. My goodness.
这本书没有
Maybe, for example,
举例说，
this is 30 page, right?
第三
This 30 page is not big. Each of the pages is not this book. The back page, the back cover is not a this book.
页是这本书我们说的书，
The color is this. What is it? The yellow color, right? This is yellow color. Yellow color is not this book. This picture is not this book. The size of this book, rectangular, right? The size of rectangular this book is not this book,
这个方形是我们所说的书吗？
right?
事实上并不是如此。
Then
那么我们说，
the collection of many different parts,
我们说啊，
again, it's not that book.
我们说所有的这个东西各个部分的组合，就是也不是这本书。
Right. Now here, important to understand. Right. Now, everything is in the each of the parts. The collection of the part is not that book, right?
我们说每一个部分，它不是我们说的这本书。那我们这个组合是不是这本书？
Now here, we believe this book, just the collection of the many parts of this book is this book. We believe that way.
不会相信说啊，这个书的各
That
部分
alone is a
组合
true
是我们所说的这本书。那这样子的一种
the parts, the many collection of the parts of this book
存在，
as this book, that is true existence,
因为我们再重复一遍，我们相信
independent existence,
它的所有
intrinsic
部分组
existence.
合的整体变成了我们这本
And
书。
believing of it is a grasping.
信仰不相信
Believing of it is a grasping.
也是
Right.
实有的存在的这样一种相信，我们就会去支取它。
Now the problem is, if this book,
但如果说
if the so-called this book, yellow book,
如果我们做
is something,
这本书
is the collection of this book, right?
是
We
各
believe
部分的组合的话，
if we may say, oh, if each of this part is not this book, then the book is the collection of the many parts of this book. If we do say like this,
是它每个
then we are believing the many collection of the parts of this book is this book. If we believe in that way,
相信说啊，这个所有的组合成为了这本书。
so therefore, to our mind, to our thoughts,
心里面
this book is appeared as something, this book is appeared as something from its own side, means it is something findable. This book is findable from the
这本
many collection
在我们
of this
心里
book,
面，我们认为它
that many collection,
这个
the,
上面
the collection of the parts of this book. Therefore,
它是
if
各个方面的组合而存在的。
if the many collection of the parts of this book
这
is
本书是能够寻找
this
能够
book,
寻找得
right?
到的
And if you try to believe in that way,
如果我们这样的去相信它，
then That's why we suffer.
我们就会生，我们就会
Right.
受
Then, if that is the case, then why the manipulation of the parts of this book as this book? If that is the case, then the manipulation of the parts of this book as this book, why this book need to depend on the causes and conditions? Why it needs to depend on the
反过
parts?
来说，如果说这本
Why this
真
book?
实的是因为各个方面的部分组合而成为的是这本书，那我们就
Why
会
this
说
book
那为什么这本书
need
它
to
它是受到因果的
depend on the designation, mental designation?
它是受到因果的，它必须
So
有
this
因
we
果
run into this
为什
problem.
么它是要基于这本书会与我们的概念的安定所有关系。
Right. So therefore, this the collection of the many parts of this book as this book
因此，所有的这个部分的组合，我们说是这样的一个可寻找到的这个
when we say this book, we are trying to, believe this book exists from its own side of many collection of many collection of the parts of this book.
是在他自边自己的身边。
This book is something fundable
方面的组合而成，
fundable
找到这样的一本书的。
from the basis of destination of this book. We believe that way.
我们会想说，这本书从它的这个基上面，是我们内心安立的这个对境上面是可以找得到的。
Right. So then, because of this, there's a tendency to believe that
有这样的一种倾向，
we are believing this book as permanent.
倾向去相信说这本书
We are believing this book to be something, enduring,
相信这本书是
permanent,
永恒的、不变的，
some kind of, only, single identity, right? Unitary, we call unitary,
稀
right?
有的这样的
Without
性质，
depending on causes,
并不需要
without
依赖
depending on anything.
依赖于其他的任何的东西。
And then because we believe
因为我们有这样子的一
we
个
believe this book to be exist from its own, side,
相信说它从
which
它
is
自己
the
的
many collection of the many parts of this book.
因为它有独立的存在，但是它是因为各个部分组合而成的这样一种独立的存在。
Then,
那么，
right, then we don't we are not then we are not believing in the principle of the theory of the designation, how things are designated.
那如果是这样子的话，那我们就对于我们所明言安立的这样的
Right.
一个概念是没有理解的。
Just so right now I take this book. I again take another example.
再举一个例子，
Now, for example,
比如说我们
it is a innate desire that we all want to be happy.
本然的，我们有这样的一种欲望，
We do not want to suffer.
不想要痛苦，
We have all the right to be happy, and we have all the right to
我们想要快乐，
shun and dispel the suffering.
我们想要驱除我们的痛苦。
We all want happiness. We all do not want suffering. There's no dispute. There is no question about this.
没有任何的dispute， 我们不想要快乐。
I want happy, right? Everybody want happy. Each one of us want happy life. Do not
每
want
一个人我们都想要有
suffering.
快乐的人生，我们不想要。
Now, therefore, now here, who is seeking happy?
我们在
Who is seeking happy?
我们在寻找快乐的这个，
Who is trying to make all the effort to dispel suffering? I,
我们尝试着
Right,
去
I,
做
it's
这个
I,
人是谁
or it's self, self.
我会说是我，
Self want happiness, self do not want suffering.
我自己不想，我们自己想要快乐，我们自己不想要痛苦。
For example, right? Why you are making all the, why you are working hard? Why you are working hard? Why you are going? Why you are taking up all this job? Why we are working hard? Why we are working hard to make a livelihood, right? And we simply say, That is the purpose. I want a happy life. I want to live happy. I do not want suffering. That's why that's why I create all the causes and conditions to be happy. That is the simple answer, right? No, but then we do say it's simply because I want happy. The word, the term happy, the word happy, happiness. Where is the one who seeks happiness? Where is the one who wants to dispel suffering? I. Right. So each one of us, the so-called I, right? No? We say I, right? I want happy. The one who is seeking, happy, where is that I? So that's very important to, check. Where is that I? If somebody, try to, we sometimes feel a little bit impatient, right? When others, talk badly of you, right? Badly about us, we feel unhappy. But who is that? But who is the one that feel impatient when hearing unpleasant words? Who's that I? We all have the sense of I want happy. I want happy life. We all have that, no dispute, But the question is, where is that I? The very core and in-depth question is, where is that I? On the other hand, the simple question is, where is that I? That's very, very important to understand. Where is that I? One's head is not I. Right hand is not I. Left hand is not I. One's stomach is not I. One's right leg is not I. Left leg is not I. One's then feeling. Your feeling is not I. And one's feeling is not I. Right. One's recognition that the awareness, awareness, or what is that? That's discriminative awareness. Discriminative. This is right. We do have this kind of recognition, awareness. That again is not a I or self. One's mental consciousness is not I. Right. Now what happened? Right. Sorry. Some people, if your head is I or yourself, if your head is not I or not self, if we do say that your head is your I, then what happens? Then there are some people who has how to say, there are some people who has some completely brain damage, right? Who has some, how to say, brain dead, there are some people who has who's a brain dead. Then then we have to admit that that person has no I. That person,
就会说那个人
only problem is with the head, brain damage. Otherwise, there is some feeling, I want happy life. That person has.
那当那些脑死亡的人的时候，我们必须要去承认说，他们没有我，但是他们确实仍然
If that is the
他
case,
们有感受。
then we have to
他们有快乐
say that person does not exist
那如果这样的话，那么就会
because there is no I,
结论说那个人不存在了，因为他没有我。
right? However, although we can use each of the 5 aggregates, but I don't use it may complicate but right. Again, your left hand, one's left hand is not I. Left hand is right hand is again not I.
再一个
Because there are some people who are say, no hand,
不是我，为什么？因为
but there is a
也有
person.
左手和右手
That person I want
会有一个
say, oh, I want happy life, although physically challenged, handicapped.
身体上非常
Some people have no hand, right? No right hand, no left hand, both,
他没有左手和右手，
But that person want happy life.
但是那个人同样的，
There's a sense
他
of
也
I,
说我要快乐，他有一个感受，有一个我。
right? So, your physical, each parts of one's body, limbs, each limbs of one's body,
身体的肢
individually or the collectively, is not
它
I.
是哪怕单独的或者总集的这样的一个身体，它也不是我。
Again, we talk about the feelings.
再一次
They are positive, they are, pleasurable, feeling,
受想
they
第
are
二个就是我们的感受，
unpleasurable feeling, the pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, the neutral feeling.
我们有乐受，我们有苦受，我们有不苦不乐的中性的感受。
The pleasant feeling is I.
如果我们问说，我们快乐的感受是我吗？
So within the, feelings, there are different types of feeling, right?
感受当中
As I said, there are positive feeling, pleasant feeling,
有乐受、
unpleasant feeling,
苦受
neutral feeling.
及不求苦不乐的。
If we say the feeling itself is I, then which one is I?
如果我们这样子，
So that's a
我
problem.
们的快乐，我们的感受是我，那我们就会问，那到底这些感受当中哪一颗是我？
For example, right now,
现在
right now, I'm in a very happy mood.
我们现在
For example,
快乐
just for 5 minutes,
5分钟，
for 5 minutes, I feel happy.
我感受到非常的快乐，
Mentally happy, physically I'm happy. Physically, feel some kind of, comfort. And then mentally I'm happy, right?
身体上很舒服，内在上非常快乐。
So that feeling alone,
这样的一种
I don't say I, it's I. That feeling alone is not a I.
感受就是我。
If we admit, if we acknowledge that the feeling itself is that positive feeling or pleasant feeling is I,
快乐的感受是我的话，
right? Then what happened?
那会发生什么？
Then I may have neutral feeling,
那当我们这些不苦不乐的感受升起的时候，
right? Then what happened? For 5 minutes, I'm in pleasant mood, right? Pleasant feeling, which is then followed by 5 minutes of unpleasant
5
feeling.
分钟是很快乐、很舒服，5分
Then
钟又变成中性的
You,
感受，
in that 5 minutes of unpleasant feeling,
或者
we have to admit
快乐的
that
感受，
there is no person
那我们会怎么办？那这样
because we have
我们
already
在
recognized
我们痛苦
the
的
pleasant feeling as a I.
不快乐的
So there's a so long as there's a pleasant feeling, there is a I. There's a person. So long as there is no pleasant feeling,
快乐的感受
there's no I. Then during the unpleasant feeling, we have to admit there is no person, there's no I.
我们没有在不快乐的时候。
Again, if you try to investigate that way,
我们这样
it's
去分析
very uncomfortable. If we posit feeling as a I, very that's
如果我们认为
difficult.
这个感受是我的话，那这样子会有很多的问题。
Then again, like the awareness, we can also do the same.
我们的认知，我们的思想，我们同样的去这样去分析它。
Now there's the last one, which is called that need to be also we need to use the very profound logic,
最后，
because there's a mental consciousness, because some believe
我们的意识
because
会像
the mental consciousness itself is a person.
是不是就是我？我们会这样子问，
Because they believe,
有些人
not
会
only
相信说
not only here, in elementary schools, ancient
不仅仅
in
是
ancient
在
traditions,
古代的时候，
in ancient traditions which is
很多的传统，
which has rich philosophical background.
他们非常富有的，
They do say, to some extent, yeah, they are, to some extent, what they do say is to some element of truth, because what they do believe is
他们所说的有可能有某些的有道理，
right. So, in early tradition, some they do believe the self is a permanent.
在很多的传统里面，他们认为说我就是永恒的，
So they do believe, the self come from the past,
他们
There's a
认为
past life. They do believe in ancient tradition, Indian tradition, some ancient Indian tradition. They do believe,
传统里面有些宗教，
there's a continuity of the mind, continuity of the
是
mind.
永恒的，
So
从过去
with the continuity of the mind, the self also come from the past
他们认为我，
because they do believe in rebirth theory,
因为他
right?
们也相信
So
轮回，
the self come from the past.
他们认为我从过去而来，
There must be something which also goes in the future,
他们
in
认
the
为
next life.
同样的一定有一个东西进到下一世。
If they posit the physical body is
如果
What
他们
happened?
安利这个物质的身体是我的话，
in the case of the, for example, like Christianity and the Islamic tradition,
在基督教或者伊斯兰教，
when the person dies,
他们
is
在
buried,
死亡的时候，他们会被
is
他们会
buried,
被
right?
埋葬
In the Christian, they put in the coffin, and then buried
放在
in the
棺材里
ground,
面埋葬起来。
right? Or in the Islamic tradition, they also put buried under the the earth.
伊斯兰教，或者我们中国人也是这样子。我们
And
会
then
葬起来
in the Hindu tradition
在
and
基督
the
教
Buddhist tradition,
佛教的
then they are the burnt, they brought to the
一般都会
cemetery,
火化
right? Cemetery and then burnt, right? So some early ancient traditions they do
古
believe.
代的人，他们认知到，
Okay,
如果是这样子的话，
what they do believe is this body get cremated.
如果死亡的时候，我们的身体都被火化掉了，
They cannot accept that self is
他们没有
cremated
办法接受说我被
because
火化
they do believe the fundamental. You do believe in the theory, rebirth theory.
因为他们从根本上，他们确实是相信轮回的。
If they accept in the rebirth
他
theory,
们相信轮
right?
回的话，
then there are some person who remembers past life.
那有人
who recollect the
过去
past
式
life. So they believe something is going in the next life.
相信说一定有一个东西进入到未来
The,
世。
the present body cannot go to the next life because present body either buried or
要么是
cremated.
被埋葬，要么
So they must be going something,
一定有一个东西，
So that which goes on in the next life after life is nothing other than the self, I, self.
像轮回的
That self is because
就是我
it continues life after life.
认为这个我
They
是
call
永恒的
is permanent self.
这个我是永恒的，一直的持续下去。
Right.
Soul
Yeah, soul.
他们
Although, so yeah, permanent, yeah, self or soul.
他们相信有这样的一个永恒的我或者灵魂，
Therefore, they do believe the self as permanent, unitary,
相信说
and independent.
是永恒的，是独立的。
As body changes,
他们的身体
the self is not changing. They do believe because it continues life after the life.
因为它生生世世这样持续下去。
Now, similarly, the mind, if you do say, oh, mind, because mind comes from, your mental consciousness, especially
犹如我们的心识一般。
especially the mental consciousness, the continuity of the mental consciousness, the continuity of the mental consciousness, which comes from the beginningless lifetime, which comes from the, beginningless lifetime up to here, present, and then
当下
goes on in the future limitlessly
我们的心识，
until we achieve enlightenment.
直到我们成就佛果，
We continue to take rebirth again and
我
again.
们这样子轮回。
Right. Now, if we accept this mental consciousness, mind, the so-called
有些
mind,
人他们会说，哦，
the continuity of the mental consciousness,
这
the
样一个
continuity of
这
the
样一
mental
个心识
consciousness.
就是我。
Right. When we talk about, mental consciousness, there are, one is, this sensory perceptions. Sensory perceptions are
识
mental
心
consciousness,
识我们有六识，我们
but these are
我们的
non-conceptual
根识
mental consciousness. Whereas
根识的话是我们
those thoughts, thoughts. For example, sometimes we, thinking about the past, we are thinking about the future. All these things, thinking about the future, the past,
现在与未来的这个思维，
right? And then those, so much of this, thoughts processes, thought experiences, these are conceptual mental consciousness,
这些我们都把它认为
conceptual,
概念
and especially many of
概
the
念的心识，
how to say delusions,
我们很多的
delusions. These are mental consciousness,
都是我们的意识，
conceptual mental
我
consciousness,
们概念性的意识。
right? So here, there, when we talk of the mental consciousness as a person, now which one? Conceptual
我们前
or sensorial?
我们有根识以及我们的意识，
Sensorial perceptions are not mental person,
我们会想说根识，我们眼识、耳识、鼻识，那这些
right?
是概念性
How do we know?
它不
How
是
do we know?
我们
It's
怎么知
because
道
some person has eyesight, eyesight problem, right?
因为有些人他有
Some
见
person has ear problem, they cannot hear. There's a ear problem,
我们
and
像瞎子一样的
for example, then some person, they have due to the blood problem,
有些人会
blood related
身
problem,
体有问题
they have no feeling,
他们身体没有感受，感受不到，
body feeling,
没
right?
有身体
Because they feel numbness of the particular part of the body, right? Right. So this, the numbness,
这
you
样
feel the, so there's no feeling,
身体
right? Mental,
没有任何的感受。
So then there within the, mental, consciousness, there are different ones, which
同样
if we
像
have,
内在
if we accept,
我们有
if we posit,
意识
if we posit that the mental consciousness is the person, now which one,
如果
which mental
我
consciousness,
们的
can
心
we
是
single
是
out,
我们是
can we pinpoint
那我们
or
能不能
single
指
out
出
this
哪一
particular
哪一种心
mental consciousness is a person? Difficult.
哪一种的心识是我？
Again, when we talk about the mental consciousness, now there are different types, there are different subtlety.
我们有很多的分很多的这个
During the waking state,
这样
we are playing here and there, we are doing, during the waking state, the gross mind, all the sensory perceptions, sensory perception, the thoughts, all these gross things, gross mental states are active, remains active.
心识都是非常的活跃的。
Right. Now then, when we go to sleep, when we do, even when we go to bed, there's a two states where one is dreaming,
我们在睡觉的
where one is going through deep sleep.
有梦，有做梦，还有深入的深层次的睡眠，这样的两种。
During the dreaming, the mind becomes little subtler.
当我们在做梦的时候，我们的心变得稍微的，相当于醒来的时候，
When we
要微弱一点。
When we go through deep sleep, then
那我们就非常深入的
during the waking state, we have all the sensory perceptions active. These are now stopped. These are no longer active during the during the dream state and during the deep sleep.
进入到梦
These are not
睡眠以及深层次的睡眠的时候，你们这个感官上的认知的心识就已经不活跃了，已经
right. And then much more subtle is during the fending, fending in ordinary lovemaking.
说
During the ordinary lovemaking and also during
我
the
们的心，
fending state,
我们在
during the state of fending,
晕倒
much
晕倒
your mind becomes much subtler. And also during the coma,
的时候，我们的
some people remain in the
非常
coma,
的
right?
细
Much
有
more
些人
subtle.
进入到这个空马的时候，他们的心呢就变得更加的微细。
The most subtlest one,
最为微细的这个心，
then that is during the death.
就是在我们死亡的时候，
During the deaths, during the process of the death,
死亡的过程，
the most subtlest mind,
我们
the
的
innermost subtle
最
mind,
为微细
now
的
that is manifested at the time of death.
在我们死亡的时候，
During during active waking state,
在我们醒着的时候，
because active minds, because of the gross mind,
因为我们充分的
because
心，
when the gross minds are in active state,
充分的心，
there is no way that the subtle mind manifests at the same time.
我们充分的心是活跃的。那当充分心活跃的时候，我们极微细的这个心是没有办法显现的。
Similarly, when we are in the state of when we are in the state where the subtle mind manifests, all the gross mind
当我们
cease.
处于那些状态中，当我们的微细的心显现的时候，我们充分的心识也就会不会显现。
Right. But actually, what goes on in the next life is the very subtle mind, what we call as clear-light mind.
那真正的龙
That is only manifested
是我们
during the certain stages, during the sleep, during the sleeping state, during the fending, during the ordinary lovemaking, during the solar eclipse, during the lunar eclipse,
在我们 coma， 在我们
during the coma,
高潮的
and
时候还有在日食、月食的等等这些情况下，
then the fully qualified, the most inner subtle mind is now at the time of death.
但是心都会变得稍微微细，但是在真正的最为微细的心是在死亡的这个时候。
Then the dealings with the most subtle mind,
因此
these are now explained in Tantra, and especially the highest yoga Tantra talks
相关的
about
这些内容
talks
在我
about
们
the
无上部的密续当中所有讲到
the
的
method to
怎么样
the method to
无上部
manifest
这个方法
right to this
所
to
讲到
that
的
clear light
如何
mind state.
采用方法来让这样的一个极微细的心所显现。
So therefore, if we have very good understanding of emptiness,
如果我们对空性
if we have very foundation understanding of emptiness, and very nice understanding of emptiness, it will really be. And if someone is really practicing the practitioner of highest yoga tantra, then really prove to be
特别
extremely helpful during the time of death.
修行无上密续的人来说，当他对空性有极为深入的理解的时候，
Even in understanding,
会非常有帮助。
trying to practice the highest yoga tantra, emptiness is crucial.
哪怕无论如何，哪怕
Without understanding, there's no way.
的话
Without understanding emptiness,
非常的
difficult to practice.
必要。
Even the whether it is the practices of the highest yoga tantra, like this.
Venerable,
So
just to follow up the question about, we say consciousness or mental consciousness is not I, the so-called I. Right? We talk about different levels of a consciousness. And some people may question, and yes, maybe the gross consciousness is not I. Or what, as you mentioned, what goes next life is the subtle consciousness. So they may say, is this subtle consciousness I?
subtle consciousness is not again I, right?
我们刚才替大家问一个问题，就是我们讲到说这个心不是
If we have to say
讲到说轮回转世的这个心是我们
within the mental states, there are different levels,
那答案是说这个极微心也
the mental state during the waking state, the mental state during the sleeping state, the mental state during the fending, during the hot, for example, like ordinary love making, and then during the
普通的性爱的时候，在死亡的时候，
during the death, which one is the person?
哪一个是我？
Which one is the self?
哪一个是我？
Which mental states do we, regard as a self?
哪一个
None.
时我们说是我？
Because if we had to say the mental state during the waking is the person, then when we
那醒着的
then
时候
on other occasions we have to say there's no person.
那我们在其他的时候，我们就
There's a person I want happy life.
没有我
I do not want
睡
suffering.
觉的时候，死亡的时候没有我，
This problem come right.
那这些问题就会发生。
So you apply this reason, Again, if you say, clear-light mind,
让我们说
clear-light mind, which then goes on in the next life is the person.
光明心在轮回，
If we do the state, then during the waking state, we are not person. We have no sense of I.
在我们醒着的时候，睡眠的时候就没有我。
So if you try to use all this, critical, scrutiny, critical, analysis, logical analysis, then you see
我们这样子的，
mental consciousness,
我们这样去分析，
either of the 5 aggregates are person.
我们就会有一个结论，就是我们任何的一个五蕴当中的任何一个，我们找不到哪一个是五蕴中的色受想行识。概括来讲，就是我们的身心找
So
不到任何一个我。
the so-called, I want happy life, I do not want suffering. Tomorrow I need to wake up at this and that, at this time, at that time. Or tomorrow I need to go for job. Tomorrow is vacation, I'm going to this.
今天我要去休假，
I have this plan and that plan. We're making all this plan, right?
我们做这样子。
But then if you try to search, that's I, that I, which is the which is the basis for both samsara and both nirvana, right?
是我们轮回以及涅槃的，
It's the basis.
是我们轮回和涅槃的这个根基，
We are not able to find
我们根本就寻找不到。
the collection of the person,
我们
5 aggregates.
我们
Now
身心的
individually, all these,
三毒的五蕴的，
each of them is not a person. Now what about the collection? The collection.
那这个五蕴的聚合体是我吗？
We are feeling the mental consciousness. We have all this in the 5 aggregates put together.
五蕴放在一起，
That put together was the collection of the
这样的一个综合，一个聚合体，
5 aggregates. Is this collection of the
这样
person?
的一个聚合体，是我们所说的我吗？
Mhm. The collection is not a person, right?
我们说不是的，
Mhm.
why？
Here, for example, again during the death state, during the death, this is a gross body, right? We have gross body.
身体
We have some physical gross body,
有这样的一个身体，
and then we have the physical gross body, and then we have the feeling,
我们的受
gross feeling,
感受，
and then
想
recognition,
我们
the
的
aggregate of recognition,
受想，
the composition,
心
compositional aggregate,
我们
and then the mental consciousness.
我们的各种感
All this collected together, collection.
绪，然后我们的意识，我们的分析。
At the point of death, all these are ceased.
这个组合体，当我们在死亡的时候，他们都分解了、分离了，
All these are ceased, right?
都会分离。
But then, at the time of death, all these are ceased.
当我们在死亡的时候，我们这个五蕴和四大就会开始分离。
But then, something is going on in next life.
但是我们仍然有下一世，下一世会有。
If we believe these 5 collections are the person,
如果我们相信说我们
then
这个
when
无
all this,
数
when all this collected are ceased,
那当这样的一
we
个
also
过程
have
出
to
现的时候，
admit,
我们必须要
posit
去
that the person also ceased to exist.
这样的一个
If the person ceased, just like, when the, flame of the candle, when the flame of the candle extinguished,
如果这样子的话，就犹如灯，叫什么？
when the 5 aggregates, these are collection of the 5 aggregates are ceased at the point of death. We have to accept
我们必须
the
要
self also,
我们必须要去承认说，
the self also exists. If the self
这
ceased,
个我，
then what is going in the next life?
如果我消失掉，那我们就没有下一世，我们去下一世又是什么呢？
Not only that, not only this, so there's some kind of this one, a little, how to say, it's related with philosophical understanding,
在另外一
because
个语言，这个和我们哲学
in
的
the
概念的理解
in the lower school, for example, like
下部里
the
面，
propounder of the Hinayana tradition,
比如我们小
the
时候
propounder,
有部一切有部的这个中译里面，
the propounder of the Hinayana tradition, what they do believe is,
说
those, the person, the practitioner,
我们的我，
those, practitioner, particular practitioner, when they, achieve the cessation quality, moksha,
当他们
moksha, or what is called as,
证得罗汉果或者
Nirvana
涅槃的时候，涅槃的
nirvana,
时候
nirvana, their philosophical understanding is that
他们所
the
相信
moment
当
the moment this practitioner achieve
当
the
他
moksha,
当他们证得
moksha,
涅槃的时候，
they believe the self, all the, the continuity of the body, the mental consciousness, everything is
这
stopped.
种相续呢就会终止了。
The person is stopped, they believe.
因为这样的一个我就消失掉，没有了。
Why they do believe the person is stopped?
为什么他们这么说呢？
Because the collection is stopped,
因为这样的
physical aggregates, the continuity, is
终
stopped.
止了。
So the only thing left is just the kind of, the something permanent,
是一个
the quality of the cessation.
是
The
灭
quality of the cessation alone is left.
常会有无尽的
Nothing
状态
stopped. Nothing is, ceased like,
停留的，
extinguish the fire. When we blow the candle of the fire, it extinguish.
有
So everything is stopped, the
一
continuity.
样
So there is just the mere,
仅仅
the quality is left.
是灭地的。
Who experienced that quality? Nobody.
谁在经受这样的一个灭地的工程？没有，
So there's something interesting,
这个是非常有意思的一个。
right? So anyway, so what time?
We have 10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes. Oh, then, yeah.
So we, just for help some of the Chinese practitioners to
Hmm.
meditate on emptiness isn't related to the practice.
I see.
And we have just, the rest of the 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And
So then,
do
yeah.
a guided meditation. Some of them have some feelings about how to meditate on emptiness.
So this, so this understanding also, very, helpful, very, very helpful when we, try to gain really a very, good understanding of the, selflessness,
也是我们对于无我
emptiness.
的了解。
So then, we have been talking a lot. We have been talking,
谈论了很多
about the, the empty,
关于空
the
性
selflessness, all these things,
这些内容。
right? But then when we try to relate it to one's own experience,
和我们自己的经验，
now how we are
怎么
supposed,
怎么样去做
how we are supposed to relate it to our experience.
效法和我们的生活联系在一起。
Now, when we talk about the empty,
从谈论到空，
when we talk about the the absence of the absence, the empty of the inherent existence, intrinsic
当我
existence.
们谈论到空无自性，没有自性，没有固有独立的存在的自性，
We have to relate it to
要如果
how things appeared.
我们要把事物是如何显现在我们
It relates to
自己的
some kind of emotion in the emotions.
我们自己的情绪、感受是相关的。
There's some kind of the deeper emotional feeling.
我们要用我们自己非常深层次的这样的情绪
Right.
去把它给联系起来。
So before that, before we try to these are understanding what we have discussed. Now when we try to relate or put into this into the in a practical sense, in a practical way,
用的这个方面来讲，我们要去修辞。
we all know that this the teachings to put into the practice, then
我们的
all
教
the
法一定要放到我们的修持上面来。
the the some kind of the some already should have well trained in this the earlier practices, many of the practices which is common to the Hinayana, right?
你知道吗？
Practices the person of the three scope or three
我
capabilities,
们的
right?
我们回归到前面
Going for taking a refuge, for immeasurable,
是无量
and then
星座的修辞。
yeah, cultivating all the altruistic mind,
培养我们
these
的
things.
菩提心。
Then we already discussed all the earlier preliminaries. We already discussed last time, some of the preliminaries that some 6 preliminary practices that we have, or we discussed briefly, but not totally. So then all these things, right?
我们都已经了解了。
Then the more, but when we talk about relating it to one's own experience, the most important thing is that
与我们自己的经验关联起来。
the most important thing is just we try to recall or recollect those occasions or those incidents
首先，
where you are going through deep emotional feeling.
忆起那些能够令我们产生非常强烈的情绪的，
For example, like
比如
any very joyful, very
快乐，
situation,
极端快乐的这个情况，
or very sad, or going through very sad.
极为伤心的这种状态经验，
Or
或者
or when you feel some kind of being highly praised of,
或者
when you are being or when you are being blamed for,
非常傲慢，被别人责备，非常
or when you are in a grave danger.
或者呢非常的危险的境地， 或者非常的
for example,
举例子，
for example, when we are being praised of, you did something really great,
我们被别人
you
赞
are
扬说啊，你做得很好啊，
there's nobody like you, who can really,
举世无双，无人可以
you are
替代
being, highly praised of
被别
to
人
the,
高度赞扬的时候，
to the something like to the limitless of the sky, space. at that point,
然后那个在这样的一些强烈的
especially you are being praised of a lot in a
每个人
some
都有
public
自己的这个经验，比如说在广大的群众当中被赞扬，
what is your reaction?
我们的反应是什么？
we try to look inward, right? We try to look inward how the so-called I
我们要去
that we are talking about
我们
a
这个
while
所谓的
ago,
我
how that I is responding,
是
how
什
that I is.
是怎么样子？
That alone is identifying.
我们在这样的一些强烈的情绪
In
下，
order to reach, in order to
去观察
in order
这样的
to
一个我
have the flavor, in order to taste the flavor of the emptiness,
能够
you
让我
need
们
to
去
identify this
尝
I.
去品尝到空性。我们首先我们要去发现、认知到这个我。
In our day-to-day life, we don't experience that,
我们可能不会感受
Then
到
when
强烈
during the deeper emotional, state, when we are, for example, like, when we are being praised of,
被别人赞扬、批评等等，
in a normal state, that I is something like normal,
是因为我们的我
in
还要
not active.
不是很活跃。
When being praised,
当在
that
这
I
些
is
情况下
so
被别人
become
赞扬
so
啊等等，
something so vivid, something so solid,
非常
very solid.
强烈的这样的一个我显现起来。
Again, another example, for example, like you're well respected, you have all the good name and all this, wonderful things. In the public, for example, when you are being abused, when you are being, criticized,
被别人批评，被别人 abuse，
when we are, people put a lot of negative, comments,
别人指责等等这些情况下，
criticize, not only criticize badly,
非常的
you
过分的指责我们，
or, in some case, verbally attack,
在有些
physically
情况下
attack.
身体上、语言上的这种
In
攻击
such a case,
等等这些情况下，
it is something criticized. This I
我们这个时候我们内心自带
I
的反应，
is highly, well respected, educated, something like this.
我会认这样的一个我是
How dare somebody
教育的被别人
do this
赞扬的，
doing this to me?
他们怎么可以这样子对我？
A sense of, a different emotions
在
arises.
这种强烈的情
Different emotions arises at the same time. Very I,
这样的一个我的
very solid I, very as if you can really catch, hold,
好像你能够碰触到它
very I.
这样的一个我的概念在心中升起。
Again, for some other, instances like,
在其他
when you are in a grave danger,
比如说我们在很危险的境地，
right? Grave danger that you are being, for example, like, for a capital punishment, right? In a death row, in a prison death row.
我们面临着死刑，
How much, how much we clinging onto this life,
的经验，比如说被
how much you cling onto this life, how,
我们认知到我们
how strongly you are clinging onto your body and this life,
执着于
the sense of
那个我，
during that, for example, like death row, right?
我们是如何
The
击
sense
溃
of I
身体
is very
这
strong.
个此生。那这样子，
You get fear,
我们这当下的那个我，
as if I'm going to dissolve,
我们的恐惧就好像一切都会
I'm going to
无法
dissolve
抵挡
nowhere. Because we believe, when we talk about the, self, it's something totally that you cannot catch hold of,
内心真正
We identify the body as this I, something I.
这样的一个无
So therefore, a
对
great
我的
deal
一个执着， 这个我好像是实
For
有的，
example, those people who really,
非常的
cling on to this life very strongly, when the doctor say
执着于此生，
you have 1 week to live, you have 1 month,
你只有一个月
when you have 3 months,
或者你只有3
that
个月的生
person
命的时候，
physical health
那么这样的
continue
这个
to,
他们的身体
continue to get worse and worse.
马上就会变得恶化，
Why?
为什么呢？
Right. So there's so much stress of permanent feeling,
这样的一种
permanent
执着于
grasping.
这样的我的永恒的一个执着，
Makes-
令它产生的。
Right. So then
那我们禅修的时候，
then in this, deep emotional, feeling, when we're going through the deep emotional, feeling, the sense of I,
我们去观察这样的一个我的概念是如何
I don't know, sometime, for example,
有时候
I think people may have this feeling,
师傅说，大家可能有时候也会有这样的经验。
also this, sometimes also in my case also occurs,
他自己的经验上有时候也是这样子，
when being a little bit praised,
跟别人赞扬的时候，
deep sense,
心里面有这样的一个深层次的
I
这样一个我能够
I
会升
appears.
起，
when, attractive things appear,
好看
a
的
sense
东
of
西
I.，
好的东西在面前的时候，这样的一个我会升起。
But do understand that
但是我们要去了
the
解
sense of I,
这样的一
the
个
sense
我
of
的概念，
just identifying this sense of I, how it appears, that alone is the question. That alone matters most.
因此仅仅是这样的一个当下，就认知到这样的一个我是如何升起的，这个变
The
得
moment it arises,
这个当下
you look into it. You try to look into it, how it appears.
觉照它，觉知它是如何升起的。
But the question is, that appears instant.
但是
Instant come, instant goes
我们
away.
的问题在于，这样的一个我的经验，它来得快，去得也很快，是非常瞬间的。
Once we are able to identify that appearance, the mode of appearance and the mode of grasping,
这样的一个我的显现的方式，
we are
我们
closer
失去
to
于这样的一个我的
selflessness,
显现
we are closer to emptiness,
我们与空性就接近，
because emptiness has to relate
因
with
为
the experience.
空性是我们的经验所相关，
That's it.
我们空性跟空的，就是这样的一个，
This is how we practice.
这是我们如何去修行，
Just try to look into,
我们
but
尝试着去观察。
then to identify these things, it's intellectual understanding alone will to some extent very helpful.
对于这些空性的了解，哪怕仅仅是在智慧的层面上有了解，都会很有帮助。
But then you need a tremendous amount of merit, the
但是
support of
呢，
merit.
我们为了证悟空性，我们同样的也要很强大的
It is
福德
not
资源，
something the pure intellectual
不
understanding.
仅仅是
not
智慧上，
you
仅
know
在智慧上了解是不够的，
you need some other factor
我们需要其他的因素
to
的助缘，
to make it identify.
就让我们能够认
If
识到
it is, if it manifests at a single instant, we need to prolong it in order to
这样的一个
identify it, and in order to prolong it, you need the support of merit. We need the support of merit.
有足够长的时间去观察的，
That's why Mandala practice make tremendous,
我们要很多的
sense.
资粮。
We need to practice the
我
mandala.
们为什么要做曼达供养？
We need to do the purification practice like 35 confession practices, because these are extremely, one of the powerful, the methods to really, go much deeper into this nature of the reality, and to have a really a smooth, to really have a much deeper understanding and acquiring some kind of, the flavor of what really is emptiness.
福德的资粮的支持，让我们对空性尝到空性的味道。
Right. So whether we call about the, this kind of, meditation or, so that's what we are trying to, we need to do, try to recollect, recall this, emotional, moments, those, occasions where you, when you go through the emotional, very deeper emotional, experiences, then try to, look, right, how that I is, it arises instantly, it vanishes instantly. Strange things. Right. So when we, so the first thing is now, if we have, difficulty in, recalling this instant, if we have difficulty in recalling those instances, deeper emotional instances, and if we, even if we are able to recall the instances, if we are really having a hard time, identifying this, just make it manifest this, the appearance of I, right? Even we are able to identify it, to make it, little, for example, if it's 1 second, we need to make it, prolong it for 5 seconds. To do that, we need the amount of pretty good amount of merit.
So when you talk about prolong, the time to prolong the time that the vivid eye appears.
Yeah, appearance of eye,
So we can
appearance of eye, and how the eye appears, and how the, on that eye, based on the appearance of eye, how you are grasping.
我们所要做的什么，就是认知到这样的一个固有的、实有的我的执着心是如何升起的，以及我们如何去执着于它。
Like, because that, whether it's grasping is in grasping, clinging is involved, Why? Therefore, we need a very powerful antidote. We carried this from since beginner's lifetime. Beginner's lifetime, right? We carry all this from the beginner's lifetime. So you need a very powerful, we need to apply very powerful antidote to really, to totally uproot, right? And then, I'm trying to say something, I forgot.
我们对治我们的烦恼，我们需要有强大的对治的良药。
Right. Now, for example, because we are ready to, grasping and, clinging. For example, if I say, somebody is in the room, is there anybody in the room? Right. If we say there's nobody in the room, instantly we believe, something absolute is not inside the room. Nobody absolute, nobody absolute is inside the room. Some kind of, when you hear, this cup is not on the table. There is no cup on this table, right? Now we believe, something independent. Something independent is not in. The lack of something independent is not here on this table. Therefore, even when we try to establish, understand, when we try to establish the empty, the selflessness, Buddha taught, emptiness of emptiness. Even, things are empty. We really develop, gain a good understanding. But still, there's a tendency tendency to believe
仍然有这样的一种
emptiness of this table, emptiness of this cup. Although this cup is empty, emptiness of this cup, still we believe this empty as something intrinsic in existence. Therefore, Buddha say this emptiness again is empty.
这个空性变成一个永恒的
Emptiness of emptiness.
因此，为了对治这样的一种烦恼，
There's a
我们要讲到了空性，
grasping is taking every opportunity
因为我们
to hold on to something,
我们的心会寻找任何
to looking forward each and every opportunity.
任何的
So therefore, need a very powerful antidote supported with a tremendous amount of merit.
我们必须要有足够的
Right? Sometimes it is very helpful to
智慧呢，也辅导
really understand the reality, rather than
这帮助我们去认识到世间的真实，真实的世界。
rather than just rather than rather than talking all the the beauty, right? The beauty of the things.
非常重要的是，我们要认识到这个世间的真实，而不是仅仅的我们去谈论表象上的这些美妙。
Right? Because if things are for example, if things it is much better to accept the reality, right? When we talk about accepting the reality, what is the nature of the things,
我们要接
it's
受
very
现
important to
实
understand.
接受
Very
现实
important to
接
understand
受事物它的
the nature of the things, So because why we need to understand the nature of the thing is because we want happy life. We do not need suffering.
因为我们都想
Therefore, if we want happy life, we do not want suffering. It's very important to understand the nature of the things, Based on the nature of the things, For example, this table is impermanent, absence of inherent existence, intrinsic reality. Based on that, now we act. Based on the reality, we act, right?
我们才去应对它，去面对它。
How, on the other hand, if we talk about all the, I mean, I'm not against, talking the beauty of the, many things, beauty of the teachings.
表象上的快乐，
We can talk about the beauty of the teachings, but then we need to dispel the suffering from the root. In order to dispel the suffering from the root, we need to go to the bottom of the, we need to go to the bottom. The bottom is the reality of the things.
事物的真实的
The reality of the things we act.
事物的真实。
Then there is a transformation take place.
因为通过这样子，我们内在的转变就会发生。
Right. And then once we, then there are two, practitioners, right? One is less intelligent and one is more, better understanding of, one is, the person of the, superior capability and one is the lower, intelligence.
对于那些
The person of the lower scope,
上市
as a result of practicing,
上
the
市道的修行者，
emptiness, if that person,
空性，
now we may wonder, what is the joy, what is the joy,
我们可能会说啊，我们的快乐，我们
gain through, gain through gaining some flavor of the emptiness, right?
我们通过认识到空性，我们会去获得什么样的喜悦？
So the joy of that person is like
对于下士道的这个行者来说，他们的喜悦
when the person
是
firstly, freshly and newly
非常最初的
realize
认
emptiness.
知到空性，见到的时候，
That person's joy is something
他们的
limitless. You cannot
喜
measure.
乐，他们的喜乐是不可想象的。
This is, this is something attached to, this kind of, the metaphor is like
这个比喻
the beggar,
就好像是乞
a
讨
very
者，
poor beggar finding the treasure.
非常贫穷的乞讨者，他们发现了一个宝藏一样。
How much the beggar find happiness when that beggar find the
这
treasure.
样的一个这个贫穷者，他们发现了这样的一个宝藏的时候，是多么的愉悦和快乐。
His or her joy is boundless.
当这样的一个最初见到的行者，
Not talking about the rich person finding a treasure, the beggar finding a treasure. Right. And then if you're a less intelligent person, right?
一个智慧稍微缺少的，
If you're a less intelligent person, then that person is like, a great deal of fear. It says,
对于上士道，他们上士的行者
a sense of, fear comes.
对于下士的行者，他们听闻到空性、见到空性的时候，他们非常的恐惧。
A sense of deep fear. Why the fear comes is, right? Because since beginningless lifetime,
有史以来，
since beginningless lifetime, not only that person, we all right.
是这样的一个行者，我们都是如此。
We all have been entrusting single-pointedly
我们都
to the independent self,
长久地
independent I,
我们都
solid I,
我们这样的这
true
个
existent I.
如此的真实。是
When that I give you order, we, we,
这样的一个
single-pointedly and,
给我们
courageously
的时候，我们一心
follow
一意地
that independent I, we are like the servant of that independent
富有的我
I self.
我的
Independent self,
指示，
gives us order and we are
他
ready
给我
to.
们任何的指示，我们都会去遵循。
So, we are so embedded, embedded and so caught up, so caught up,
我们是如此的
so caught up with that, independent, self and I, as if,
这样的一个独立
as
的
if we don't
我
survive
信仰
if we don't rely on that,
就好像说我们
independent
没
self.
有了这样的一个我富有的我的时候，
Then
我们
at
就
one point of
不像
time,
一样
when we reveal the true color of this independent I, we feel afraid. We feel such,
我们认识到这样的一个所谓的我
we
真实
feel
存在的
real, fear.
的状况，
Now I'm going to disappear. I'm dissolving into nothingness.
是没有的。
This kind of fear comes.
很大的恐惧，因为我们会担心说，我就不会存在了。
I'm, I would be going to nowhere.
我们就会担心、害怕我就不存在了。我会
This fear comes because we are totally,
存在
believing this independent, self, independent I.
的相信有这样的一个独立的我。
Now you believe, it is the independent I is the ruler, ruler and I'm the servant,
我们知
so
道
something like
这样的一个
so
固有的我的概念
when we ascertain the emptiness, when we realize emptiness,
模糊
therefore,
当我们认知到空性的时候，
we get fear, feeling that we are separating from this self.
发现这样的一个我是完完全全没有的，我们会恐
We
惧
are。totally separating from this
这样
self,
的一个我分离。
right? From that way, right? So at the same time, there's a danger. There's a danger of falling into the extreme of nihilism.
同样，在这个情况下，我们也有一种可能危险，我们会落入到断变，
Because
做断见。
If the absolute I does not exist,
我们会认为说，
I'm also
我们的我是
no longer existing.
那
You one get that kind of feeling.
我们会有这样的一种感受。
So therefore,
因此，
again, tremendous amount of
一
merit
定需要有
is required,
有强大的这个福德资粮的支撑。
right? With this understanding, Buddha taught form is emptiness, emptiness is form.
这样子
There is no form other than emptiness, no emptiness other than form.
空即是色，
In Hastra, Buddha taught this.
空不即是
Right.
空即是
So
色，
emptiness and form,
不异色，这样子。
when we say emptiness, it does not mean zero, it does not mean nothingness. Emptiness just indicates
不存在，空性
emptiness proof that there is something. Emptiness proof that things are dependent origination. Because things are dependent origination proves that
它是没有
things are empty.
它们是缘起的，因缘聚合而起的，因为因缘聚合而起的，所以它们是空性的。
So there's closer relationship, right? like this.
他们之间
So therefore now, then yeah. So this is all about,
这个是
visualization, about emptiness,
性的这个
in when you try to relate it to one's own experience, then try to recall those emotional moments,
讲到的一
and
个
then yeah,
回忆我们的
and then when the grasping very strong eye comes,
的时候，我们
strong eye comes. But first of all, the important thing is to identify that eye, to let it appear within your mind, to let it, let it happen, right?
首先我们令它显现，
And then
然后呢，
immediately
他们有可能这两天给我马上就消失掉。当你认识，
we sometimes talk that you need to create tremendous amount of merit in order to
这是我们
understand and realize emptiness,
一定要有
It is,
足够的资粮。
when we talk about this, the main thing is that to make it identify
首先
is
我们
the you need
让它
tremendous
显
amount of
现
merit
认知它
to let it identify, because it's, even if you identify, it's just instant. So then, as we discuss, we need to do, 35 confession practices,
做这个35佛的忏悔，
right? 35 compassion practices. You need to do mental practices for creating merit. You need mental practices, for example, like in order to purify your negativities, you need,
其实进账的这样的一些修行，
because sometimes in order to make your spiritual progress,
为了让我们
spiritual progress stuck.
更加的
Sometimes your spiritual progress stuck, because why it's stuck is because
我们
due to the lack of your merit,
紧的时候，
you are not able to progress further
福德
because of the lack of the
没有福报，
accumulation of merit and the lack of the purification practice.
我们缺少
So therefore, you are not able to progress further
当
we
这
get
些
stuck
方面啊，是
at
因为
one
我
point
们
of
缺少
time,
这些方面。
right? And then,
Once we identify, what do we do?
huh?
Once we identify, what do we do?
Yeah, this is what I'm trying to say here.
那刚才是不是讲了很久，就是说我们要去，首先我们要去认知，
Once we
我们应该怎么办？
once we identify and then try to
在我们
look,
显现的时候，我们就要去观察。
and then just like I'm going on the road, right? I'm going on the road.
走在路上，
When I'm going to the road, one, I have a friend, I have one friend. We go to going on the same one road, one of my eye, focus on my own road. Other eye, focus on my friend. Similarly, when we try to do this, when
我们在禅修的时候，
try to look, recall the experience,
回忆我们的经验，
and then try to, one part of your mind, we try to look into this
观
appearance,
察
the mode of appearance. We call it the mode of appearance, the mode of,
它显现的
grasping,
方式，
how the self is grasping,
方式，
right?
我们是如
And
何
then
显现和
once
这样的一个我，然后呢，
once we are able to identify it,
我们认知它的
and when we are able to identify it, when we are able to prolong the session, prolong the duration,
这样的一
right?
个过程，
Prolong the duration, then
然后
now check.
我们来分析，
Now it's a time to use the logic and
现
reason.
在是我们要用逻辑
You need to first you need to understand that this I, the solid I, does not exist.
我们要认知到，我们要知道这样的一个固有的我是
The
没有
way
存在
the self appears, the way the I appears to your mind,
升起的方式，
just as it appears in reality,
比如说它
it
显现的一部分
does not exist,
在事实的层面上它是不存在的。
right? If, however, if it does exist,
如果它存在
then
的话，我们
what
这样
would be
子
the
我们这样的
problem?
思维如果它存在的
Then
话
then if it does exist now, self, if it does exist, then it should independently,
如果它存在的话，它一定是独立的，
it should independently exist from the five aggregates,
独立于我们的五蕴之外而存在，
right? From the collection of the five aggregates.
对不对？它一定是
If it
如果它
exists,
存在的话，它一定存在于我们这个五蕴
Right.
当中。
it exists from the collection of five aggregates, right?
五蕴的
If it exists from the collection of five
如
aggregates,
果它从五蕴的聚合当中存在的话，
this self,
那这
the
样的一个
self
我
should either intrinsically
要么
same with the five aggregates or intrinsically different with the five
与
aggregates.
我们的五蕴一模一样的，要么就是和我们的五蕴完全不一样。
So this, so the great Master Nagarjuna and Master Chandrakirti, they use few logic, few, how we run into problem. If we the self, just as it appears, if it exists, then it should exist, independently, same with the five aggregates or independently different with the five aggregates.
与五蕴之一还
If
是
it,
这样的一些
if it becomes independently same with the five aggregates, then there are, few, there are few problems. If it, is the different, independently different with the five aggregates, there would be few problems. So when we go through all the,
当我们
reason,
平常学习到逻辑正理，我们这个时候禅修就要用得上。
how, the problem arises. Once we understand how the problem arises, these, different problems, then we are determined. We finally come to conclusion that this I, such appearance of I, does not exist. We single-pointedly, we are convinced, we are totally convinced
相信到，并且被说服了，
that
这样的
this
一个我是没有的。
such absence, such appearance of I does not exist. The absence, we convinced of the absence of such I,
这样的一个动物
and then once we are
的
convinced,
存在，
then try to remain in that
我们
state.
这样子获得了
The absence of
我们的禅修的
the absence of such I,
就安
the
住在
absence
这样
of
的一个无我
such
境
appearance,
界当中，
the absence of such appearance of I does not exist, and then try to
然后呢
prolong,
这样尝试
try to
延长
remain in that state,
在这样的一个状态中禅修延长，
remain for, and then try to prolong it. First, try to remain in that state for a few seconds, right? And then
安住，
when we get used to it, then try to remain
安
it,
住几秒钟，
like this,
然后呢，我们不停的反复的去延长它。
right? So this is what is done during the, meditative equipoise.
这个是我们怎么样做的？是在我们
Try
禅
to
修的时
use
候，
all this,
禅定的时候是怎么样去做的？
right? So that is, so it's like, meditative equipoise like space.
在定犹如虚空，在定中的时候，
And then
禅修
post
犹如虚
meditation,
空
post
在
meditation,
的时候呢，
post meditation like illusion.
出境的观察世间的一切犹如
As we arise from that meditation experience, meditative equipoise experience, then in the post meditation, when we arise from that meditation experience, then we are able to relate.
一切犹如
Whenever we see the things and events, everything is just in the manifestation of the illusion.
我们会认知到一切
Yeah.
都是
Right? Everything is seen as manifested. So there's no much grasping, not much afflictions, not much,
烦恼，
unhealthy emotions
不健康的情绪
would arise. There's no, much less, right? So I think, yeah, we better stop, then
就到这里。那今天呢，因为师傅讲的有点详细，我觉得我们就没有必要再做任何课后的讨论。
then, then everything is seen as, mere like, everything is seen as absence of such, solid appearance,
观察
something solid,
它都是缺少这样一种固有的、自由、独立的、自信的。
So from this, everything is absence and empty of, independent, intrinsic, the solidness appearance.
都是空，
When we try to negate such,
断除
such existence of
断除
inherent
存在的话，
solidness.
这样的固有的存在的，
So from within that experience,
这
then
样的一个
we,
经验当中，
then, yeah, syllable term arise.
在这样的一个经验当中，然后我们的种子是，我们讲到观察，我们的种子是
Right.
这样。
Okay, so then we,
先吃。那下一次课呢，我们接着讲这个本尊于界的观想。刚才师傅有简单的提到空性当中如何升起本尊的这个过程。下一次呢，我们再继续。建议大家有机会呢阅读一下相关的内容，空性的内容，自己尝试一下。谢谢大家。
no question?
有问题吗？大家？ 有问题的话，你们可以直接说。
Anybody question? Huh?
好，有人有问题吗 ？OK, no question。没有问题的话，那今天就到这里，谢谢大家。
Thank you, Venerable.
Oh, you're welcome.
谢谢见。
Thank you,
you're
Venerable.
welcome.
Very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Oh, you're welcome, everybody.
就谢谢你。
Thank you.